Hi everyone. So in the previous video, we have seen how to install and create a project in Vue 3. And we have seen that in order to work with Vue 3, we need to install Node.js. So I'm assuming now that after watching the previous video, you know how to install, you have Node.js in your system. Let's check once how to check whether Node.js is there in system or not. So we will run npm -v as the command to check which version of Node.js is installed in my system. It will take some time. In the meantime, let's revise what we have done. We have installed Vue dev tools for the Chrome extension, for the Chrome browser, and also we have seen that we run a few commands like npm create vue@latest, and we followed the installation process, and we were able to have the folder with some pre-existing code. And we also saw that when we run that particular server, we had a dummy front end for us. But let's see, when we run npm -v, we got that the version for this particular npm is 10.9.2. It means that Node.js has been successfully installed into my system. So now I can run a new command which says that npm create vue@latest to start with the project, as we have seen in the previous video. Let's wait for some time to clip the processes. Yes, now if you look at the folder structure which I have over here, is that whatever code we have written for our backend, all the APIs and application, let's assume that we have put that code into the backend folder. At the same level of the backend, we want to create a front-end server. So that's where I'm running my code over here. So you can see that the level at which I'm right now is at the tutorial code directory, and that's where I'm creating the project. So here I want to name the, let's say that I give the name for the project as front-end, because I'm creating a front-end server. And when I enter, it asks me to tell you that okay, which all things we want this particular project to include. For now, we just need a router and Pinia. Okay, what are the functionalities of routers or the Pinia, we'll see in the subsequent videos. But for now, let's keep in this mind that we would be using the three things. One, the Vue 3, then we need a router, and we need a Pinia. Pinia is for the state management, router is for the navigation from one page to another, to give you a high level idea. And I have selected these two things via a spacebar, and now I can press enter, and it will create a folder. As you can see, a folder has been created with the name frontend, and it has asked us to run these few more commands. One is cd frontend to go navigate back to the front end folder, and then it is asking us to run npm install. Npm install is used to install the node modules which are there. So let's go there and start cd frontend to go back to the front end. Now since we are running this particular project for the first time, this step is required for the first time itself. If we don't need to execute the same steps again and again. We only need to run npm run dev whenever we are starting our server. The previous things we don't need to do it multiple times. So now run npm install. It will take some time to install all the modules. In the meantime, let's focus on the content of the front end folder, which was generated by the commands which we ran before. So the few of the files which are important for us or interest to us is, one is index.html. Let's look at index.html file. As you can see that this is just an basic HTML file which has an head tag with some titles and metadata which is required. And then other thing is a body tag which you can see over here. And this body itself just contains two lines of code. One is a div container which has been given an ID of app, and the next is a script tag which is importing the content of the main.js file, which is defined into the source folder of the main. And the file name is main.js. So whatever is the content in the main.js, we are importing it into this HTML file. So, and if you see over here, we'll come back to this particular part where ID is given as app, and you know from your theory course that your entire Vue application would be mounted on this particular container, and that's why we are given the ID as app. Right, so now we have to navigate back to the main.js file. So it says that this is particular file is in src, and we have a main.js file. So let's open this main.js file to look at the content. What this content looks like, it is importing some css files. Since we are starting our project, we don't need the css, so let's comment this particular line for now. Okay, and as I told you, we would be using Vue and the routers, but we would be discussing these two things after in the subsequent videos. So for now, we can ignore the part where it is talking about Pinia or the router. The important thing which I want you to discuss is the line 3 lines, basically line number 3, which from where we are importing the create app function from the Vue. And this create app would be, it would be used to mount our application onto the div container. So, and what we do is, so there is another file which is for interest for us, that is app.vue. You look at the extension which we are using over here. So since it's a Vue extension, so from the theory you have learned that there is something called as an SFCs, single file components. We'll discuss what single file components are in a bit, but for now this is in SFC file which has some code which is written. We are importing that as an app, and when we can use that particular code to create an entire application, and then we are assigning it to a constant variable app, and then we are mounting that entire application onto the container with the ID as app. So this is the content of the main.js. You have seen through it. You might have seen in your theory course a different way, but since we are dealing with Vue CLI, this is how we create and mount our application. So what is the content of app.vue? We will look into it, but for now I hope this part is clear. And now let's look at the app.vue file. So if we go to the app.vue file, as you can see, there is a bit of a good amount of code is already existing. We got this particular code when we ran the few commands when we ran npm create Vue@latest. That's when we got a dummy project, and these entire code is part of the dummy project. So, but important thing which is interest to us is the 3 tags which are defined into this Vue file app.vue. We have 3 tags which have been defined over here. One is script, another is template, and the next one is type. So this way of writing the Vue code is written as an SFC, because we have a single file, whatever the components are needed for a particular Vue component to render. For example, we need a JavaScript. So the JavaScript code would be written in between these 2 tags, the script tag. The HTML code would be written into the templates tag, and thus if you want to include the CSS into your project, you can put that into style tag over here. So with this we can start working, and let's say that I'll remove these code because this is not a part of our dummy project. We will be working from the scratch, and I don't want to overwhelm with explaining these whatever the code has been written here. We'll come back to in few subsequent videos, but for now we have these 3 tags and we have to define. Yeah. Okay, so now as you know, every SFC file will have these 3 tags. One is HTML style and the script tag. So what we will do now is let's define an HTML tag first and content for the HTML. So on this particular div container, which is we have defined over here, I want to mount some of the templates which I will define in my app.vue over here. So let's start with the container itself. We'll create a different container we'll give the name as in div, and let's create simple welcome to my app, and then we can close the HTML tag, and also we can create simple application, and we'll also pass some data over here. Yes, I hope the code is readable. It's nothing much, you already know all this. It's just that now, as if you will run your file over here, let's start working with it and let's see how our page looks like for now. So what we will do is let's come to the app.vue over here, and then we can run npm run dev. We can run our development server, and in the meantime it is getting loaded. What I'll explain what I wanted to do over here. So you can create your static files. You have done in your Mad1 project. You had multiple view pages, multiple HTML files were there, and you would find that some of the content, for example for the login or for any other page you have created in your Mad1, you had different HTML files. So for each of that pages or each of those pages, we would be having multiple components in Vue. We are creating one component over here, and that's the content which we are passing over here. So if you copy the code over here, and let's visit this particular URL, and you can see that we got the content and we are able to see, and we just return one index.html file. Let's change the title. So we are working with index.html file. Whatever was the content we have defined in app.vue is being mounted over here in this particular container. So that's the one thing which I wanted to discuss. This is very basic for now. If you you already know all this, you can skip to the advanced parts, to the later parts. But for the people who are not comfortable with the Vue, I want to go slow over here. So now I asked you to create install an extension in the browser, which was Vue DevTools. Let's see how this particular thing works. Okay, let's go open the inspect window. You can check over extensions that you already have in your extensions. You have Vue already there or not. Right now we don't have any Vue here. Okay, so what we will do, let's also in your app.py file, let's define some data. Okay, let's say constant name, and let's say that my name is Rohit Kumar. Yep, and instead of saying hello from Vue.js, I want to say that hello, I'm from, my name is there. And you have you know that in Jinja you were using curly brackets to interpolate the data from the backend, and you were using render template. So this interpolation was happening from the backend. But for in your Vue, what you can think of it, your this particular file app.vue will have access to the data which you want to interpolate in your HTML templates. So if you have you have been sending the data when you are creating APIs, and you by now you can assume that you have the access to the data which every API you have created. We'll see how to get the data from the backend, but for now let's assume that we have the data, and this is my username which is I've received from the backend via some API, and it's being stored in a variable called as name, and that's what I want to display to the users. So similar to what we have done in Jinja, we were using curly brackets to interpolate the data. We can use again curly brackets to interpolate the data, and I just define name over here. Yep, let's save the file. And if you whenever you save the file, this thing again restarts, and when we go and let's refresh, and now you can see that it got the Rohit Kumar as the name instead of the data got interpolated correctly. And now okay, I think I don't have any extension over here. Let me install the web dev tool, which Vue dev tool which was there. I asked you to install. We'll go and we can get started. We need browser extensions, and since I'm using Vue 3, I need to install version v7 for this particular DevTools, and which I can all do like this. And let's add it to the Brave. This will help us to, this particular DevTool, as we discussed in the previous video, will help us to debug our code and debug the errors which might come in the Vue application. So let's see, it got activated. It's installing for now. It's downloading. We'll wait for some time. In the meantime, so you know how to interpolate this particular data. Now there is one directive in Vue, which is vbind. We'll see the difference between vbind and interpolation, which we just saw. But for now, this extension got installed. Let's refresh the page so that it gets. Now it is, since the color is being this particular tool has an access to this particular view. So if you go and you look for okay, let me re-inspect it. It seems I have to restart the browser. Let me restart the browser. Give me a minute. Yes, it is extension. Go to the inspect window. Let's open the Vue extension first. Yep, now we got the view over here, and we can see that we have defined one data, which was name, a variable which we have defined over in our SFC file, which was name, and we can access that, okay, what a particular variable is holding the value at current particular point. Okay, this was the one which I want to demonstrate, and we would be coming to this particular Vue DevTools again and again when we start building complex, when the complexity increases for the project. But for now, this is what go-to place for us to navigate why things are not working properly, and I wanted to highlight this particular point over here. Now let's come back over here and we'll see how we can use what is the how and what is vbind, which is one of the directives in Vue. Let's say that we want to put a data in between the text, like we have done it for the name. This is, we can use curly brackets to interpolate the data. But for now, let's say that from the API, somehow you have got an URL for the image which you want to display to the users. So let's say that the URL for us is @assets /logo.png. So if you see in the assets folder, we have some logo.svg, and that's the path which I'm defining to this particular variable. We have, and there can be multiple such images which you want to display to the user. So instead of hard coding it, we define somehow we have got this particular URL from the backend via when we hit an API and we got the URL for the image. That's how we are getting the URL, and now we want to display that image. So I need to use an image tag, as we all know, image, and we need to pass the URL over here. And the example, as you can see over here, is I have just entered the URL over here and some other tags which have been there. But important point is, if I want to, instead of hard coding the URL over here, I want to use interpolation. Let's say that I want to use URL. If I want to use the URL over here, it will give me an error. So let's save the file, and you can see over here that it gave so many errors because we cannot use these double curly brackets with the attributes. Whenever we are using any attributes, we need to bind it, and that's when we use vbind ;src, and then in the brackets we define the variable name. Okay, let's save the file now. And now when we reloaded the page, we did not get any errors. And if we go and visit the page, you can see that it is giving okay, I think we have given some the URL which was there is being over here, and if we go and look at the elements tag and inside the body, you see whatever the, where is this thing, okay, inside the div container, inside this another div, you can see whatever the URL was there for assets is being displayed over here. We have given a wrong address over here, that's why image didn't got reloaded. We can do it, we can correct this. So this is this app.vue file is over here. It should go to the src folder, and inside the src folder it should look for assets and then look for svg. So let's save the file. Okay, current folder, so I'll put the @/ okay, just give me some time. I have to come up with the correct path where this, how to access this particular svg, but I hope you have understood the concept of vbind, and you can clearly see that now when we looked at the elements in the body tag over this particular div container which is over here, whatever the value of URL was there, it got binded with the src. The point and objective was to show you that if we want to bind any attributes, it can be either class, it can be style, or any other attribute which is specific to these HTML tags, that we can bind using the directive which is vbind over here. Now there is a short form for, we don't always need to write vbind every time. There is a shortcut which says that if we just use semicolon, it means the same thing, that we are binding this particular attribute with a particular variable over here. So I hope you have understood the two things over here, interpolation and the vbind. Okay, let's save the file and let me correct this path once. @ass, oh, the spelling of the assets was incorrect, ASSETS. Now let's save the file. Some spelling mistakes I'm making over here, but I hope you have got the idea over here now. Okay, and the next thing which we want to see now, we have seen vbind, now we will see conditional rendering. And what I mean by conditional rendering is, let's say that when you were sending APIs, you were sending multiple product details. For example, you created an API to display all the products which are there in your database. So you were sending list of objects from your backend. Let's assume that the data which you're getting from the API looks like this. Let's say that you get a message which says that product fetched successfully, and you got some status code, and also you get the data with some product ID, product name, product description, some price, and that's it. And now let's say that you assign this to the response, and the data which you get, this is just to one object, and you can get a list of multiple objects like this. So when you get this multiple list, how to display all the products, that is list rendering. And also the next thing which I talked about was conditional rendering. So what I mean by conditional rendering is, let's say that you have a variable which says that constant is authenticated is true. So whenever this is authenticated is true, you want to display some message over here which says that div So whenever is authenticated is there, you want to display this particular product. Let's say that this is our one of the objectives, and this should be there only when is authenticated is true, otherwise it should be false. So we have created in div tag, but like we have used a vbind over here, similarly we can use vif, and we can say vif is equals to, and whatever is a variable name which holds true or false, or it can be a function also. So let's say that is authenticated, this is a variable which we have defined over here as in here, and when the value of this it gets changed to true, then only we want to display this response. For now this value is true, so let's save the file and see the response. We wanted to display the response, and if we go and look at our view, and yep, there was this is authenticated was there, which is true. That's why we are able to get and fetch in this entire information, whatever the response which was there. But now if the value of is authenticated is false, and we save the file, now you see that response is not here, and since the is authenticated value is false, that particular container goes away. There is no change in the code as such, but that's how we can do conditional rendering. Okay, now I want you to see one thing, that let's we can change this particular value as and when with the help of some operations. Like if we click on some of the sections, let's say that when I click on a button, the value of is authenticated changes to the it gets changes from true to false. And this is one example which I'm giving, and this can be actually true. For example, let's say that you have entered your login credentials and you click on the login button. Suddenly the is authenticated value will change to true if all the credentials were correct, and vice versa. So, and when you are just fetching the data from the backend, right? So this value can this value can be changed as and when we are interacting with our application. So we want to Vue allows us the option to have in reactive variables. Okay, so I want to now introduce till now what we have done. We have introduced interpolation, we have introduced vbind, we have introduced vif, that is called as conditional rendering. It is just not limited to vif. We can have a nested if, vif, or we can have vif else also. So for example, this is vif. Okay, let's introduce the concept of nested conditionals. So let's say that if role is admin, so we can say that role is triple equal to admin. So what we are doing over here is we have defined inside these inverted commas, we are writing the JavaScript code because we are binding it with vif. So if you see, this is not an HTML code, this is in JavaScript code, and since we are using a vif directive which is being given by Vue, this our Vue will handle this as in JavaScript code and not an HTML code. That's the one thing, and that's why we can write triple equal to, which in JavaScript means that we want each and every the data type as well as the value should be same. And now this is when vif is role, we can use v else. Yeah, and so when the value of row is admin, I want to display this, otherwise I want to display this. That's the logic which I want to impart in my HTML code. And let's save the file, and since the value of is admin, we should get the response, and we are getting the response over here. If I change the value of admin to something else, let's say that manager, and we save the file, we get that you are not authorized to view this content. So that's how based on these values being changed, we can render different DOM for us. We can render different DOM in HTML, and you have seen an example of vif also. You can introduce, similarly we can introduce v else if, so which is v else if, and we can say for now let's we say you some text we are writing over here and nothing, no response is being sent, and we can put the logic as role is equals to manager. Yes. So now what we have done is we are doing conditional rendering. Initially we saw normal VF, then we saw VF and VLs being synced, and now we are using nested conditionals. So let's see, right now the value is manager. We should be able to see this particular content, and can we see that? And we can see the manager content. So I hope VF is clear to everyone now. Right now what we were trying to do over here, if you see, I was manually changing the values. So when I wanted to say is authenticated to false or true, I was manually changing that. But I don't want, like, sometimes as in when the data comes, the value needs to be changed automatically, and my DOM needs to react to that change in the data. Okay, in simpler words, let's say that I'm sending an API request to my server every 15 minutes to check whether there is any update in the values of the user who is logged in. So I'm sending every 15 minutes I'm sending API request, and I'm getting the response from the user. It says that it simply says that whether you are logged in or you are not logged in, and based on that I am displaying some content. Somehow the user gets logged in after 15 minutes. I should restrict the user to see that value, but I am not manually stopping my application and again checking that. So it should be dynamic, and my DOM should be reactive to the change in the data, which Vue provides us this functionality. So there is this particular keyword which is there in Vue. Let me import that first. So I will say import, and I want to import ref from Vue. Okay, so what this ref does for us, any variable which we declare with the help of ref, it makes that particular variable reactive. So if in order to for that let's see that we want to change, let's say that we want to make this particular name as an reactive one. So what we can do, we can just wrap this particular value of this particular variable inside the ref. So now this particular variable name has been changed to a reactive variable. Let's save the file, and let's come here. We refresh the page, and now let's say that I want to change this particular variable name. Now I have, since you see I don't have any edit option for any other variables which I have defined, but I have access to change this particular name. Let's say that I change from Rohit Kumar to, again, let's say Vue.js, yeah, and I need to put this into the brackets, and this is okay. And now my DOM reacted with this. Similarly, if I make right now, if you see is authenticated is not reactive, or similarly the role is not reactive. If I want to make this particular variable role reactive, I go here where my role is, and I wrap this particular variable around the value of particular role is being wrapped around the reference. Let's see, if we save the file, we come here, we refresh the page, so that the entire DOM lifecycle gets rearranged, and you see the role has been again assigned a ref, being a ref. Since this is a reactive, we can change the value, and as and when I will change the value from manager to admin, you see that it reacted, my DOM reacted as in when I just press the enter. So this is the reactive component which I was talking about. So every variable which I would define with the ref, and if its value changes during the runtime of our application, my DOM will react to it, and that's what we have seen right now. So just to recap what we have done till now, we have understood how to do the data interpolation. So since this name was getting over here and it is being interpolated, if we want to interpolate the data with the attributes like src or some other attributes which are there, we need to define using src, using these semicolons over here. Okay, let me, yeah, using these semicolons which we have done, or if you want to be explicit, you can just also write vbind. It's the same thing. The next thing is, after this interpolation and the vbind, we saw that how we can have a conditional rendering, and that's what we have seen over here. And now we just saw that how we can make a particular variable reactive, and a DOM will react if the value of that particular variable changes. There are few variables whose values don't change. Whether changes or not doesn't matter to us, because we have not defined them. We have not defined them as an reactive. But some things we have made them reactive, and we just saw that demonstration of that. Okay, so there is one thing with the with the variable which you have defined over here. Let's say that I am writing, I just want to print the value of this particular name over here. So I'm using console.log to print what is this name for me, just to understand what is name over for us. Let's save the file and let's come back to the view. So it's a ref property. If I go to the console, I should see I may have made a console file. I have made a console.log, which I can see over here. You see, it's not just simple. It's not a simple name which has been given. It has an attribute called as view, and it has it's a complete object. So if I want to change, let's say somehow, if I define a function over here, let's say I define a function, it's an arrow function. So function change, let's say we say the change name as a function which I want to call, and whenever this function changes, I want to change this particular name from something to something. So let's say that I call name is equals to, let's say, Vue.js. Yeah, if I'm trying to do this, let's see what happens. And also, this is not since we have defined this particular ref as an reactive property. If we want to change the value, we should use dot value, because that's how we handle these reactive elements. Okay, let's now we have seen reactivity, we have seen vbind, we have seen conditional rendering. So now we will see event handling. So what I mean by event handling, we'll see in a while. Let's say that I have a button over here. I'm using an input tag. The type for this is a button, and okay, and let's close this particular button. Let's see, okay, I need to be a bit explicit. Let's save the file. We got an error. I have to correct this template. Let's save the file. We're getting an error over here. Let's save and see. So we have a button over here. Right now, if I click on this particular button, nothing happens. What I want to do is, whenever I click on this particular button, I want to change the name of this particular thing over here. And basically, in other words, if I click on this particular button, I want to call the function which I have defined over here, which will implicitly change the value of this particular constant variable. So how do I call that particular function? So I have another directive in Vue which is called as vOn, which means that if some action happens, I want to execute a particular change, what's the function name? Yeah, so the function name I have defined over here, the change name, and so if you, so this particular this thing you see, right, at the rate is it is v on, and whenever you click on this particular button, that's the event which we are talking about. It can be hover, it can be mouse click, it can be keyboard press key, anything it can be there. But if you click on this particular button, I am asking to execute this particular function. So let's make a function statement over here also, which says that console.log changing name, it can be, you know, displayed on the console. So let's save the file. We come and let's clear the log, let's refresh the page properly, and for right now we just have nothing in the console, just the variable which we printed over here. And now if I go to the view, you can see over here that the name is Rohit Kumar. If I click on the change name, the value changed to Vue.js developer. And also when I click on the console, you say that we were printing the changing name, it got changed, and it got reactive. Here also it got changed. So now we have bind this particular button. We are saying that okay, we are what we are doing is, whenever I'm making an action, I'm calling an event to get executed. So any event happens, like clicking, mouse press key, keyboard press key, anything like that, what I'm doing is a particular a function which I've defined gets executed. So that's what we have done over here by changing the name. Okay, another example, this can be, you know, let's say that another thing which is there, which I want you to which I want to explain is, we have seen VF over here, right? There is another thing which is vShow, another directive in Vue, and we'll see the functionality of vShow as well. Right now we are not using this is authenticated because we changed it to role. I can use is authenticated as one of the variables to demonstrate that. So let's say vf vShow instead of vf is equals to is authenticated, you are logged in. Okay, and similarly I'm demonstrating it, the same line of code I have written over here. One is the vShow and another is with the vf. Okay, let's save the file and see what changes we see over here. And we will define a button over here which will change the value of this particular is authenticated. So the variable which I have defined over here is authenticated. We need to first declare it as a reactive element. That's why we are using ref. Yep, so we have defined this is authenticated as a reactive element. The next thing is, whenever I click on this particular button, I need to change the value. So I'll do is, so whenever you click on, so that is @click. So v on semicolon click and writing it as an @click are the same thing. It's just the v on is being short formed as @. So if you click on it, and I should get is authenticated dot value, it should change to true. Yes, see, let's see if some errors come or not. No error came. Currently the value of is authenticated is false. When you will click on the value, it will change to true. That's what we are trying to do over here. And we'll see, we need to focus on these two lines of the code, line 47 and line 48. What is the difference between vShow and vf? So if we come over here, we have two buttons, and right now let's refresh the page. The value of is authenticated is false. So if I go to the elements, look at the HTML page for this. Yes, you see one thing, just focus on these two lines over here. Let me increase the font size if possible for me. Yeah, now just focus on these two lines where one says that VF is in comment and other is a paragraph tag with the style saying display none, and these are two lines which corresponds to line number 47 and 48. One which we have used, the above one is for the V show and other one is for the last, and the below one is for VF. So if when the value of is authenticated is false, the style of this tag changed. It's still there in the DOM, but it removed VF from the DOM. So if I change the value and did it changed? Let me see. So when I click on the is authenticated, nothing is happening, the function is not being changed. So what we'll do, instead of writing it like this, let's create a function over here, or instead of creating a function, let's say that we are defining a arrow function here. Okay, yes, and let's save the file and we'll refresh the page once again. We'll check is authenticated is false, and when I click on is authenticated, the value changes to the true. And if we go and look at the elements, see, these were the two paragraphs which we wanted to display. One is with the styling and other is, this one was for the, this one you see was for V show and this one was for the VF. So what actually happens over here, when we use V show, it removes, it does not remove the entire tag. It keeps it, it just changes its CSS style. It makes display to none. But when we use VF, it removes it from the DOM. So that's the difference between V show and VF. Alright, and there is there are two more components, two more basic important properties which we want to understand. One is conditional. We have seen conditional rendering, we want to see list rendering, and the next one is input binding. We'll see input binding and the list rendering in the next video. For now, we'll stop here.